Okay, now, before we get started, I need to first ask a couple of questions, and I want you guys to answer honestly. Who here freezes whenever a prospect asks, how much do you charge? This could be for pretty much any type of service you're going to be doing, or just any time anybody asks you a question, like how much is it, what's the price, or how much do you charge? Who here freezes or starts mumbling or doesn't have an instantaneous answer right on the dot? I want you guys to type yes in the chat if that is the case. Angel or Angel, hopefully I said that right, says yes. Perfect. David, yes. Aditya, yes. Tony, yes. Okay. Yes, perfect. So most of you, right, answered yes to this question. That's, once again, very natural. This is part of the reason why we're getting into this. Now, what if I ask you another question? Who here has lost a deal to a potentially worse developer? When I see a worse developer, objectively speaking, it's just somebody that in your own eyes, maybe you thought you were better than them at providing a particular solution. And you may be surprised how that other person got that particular job or got that money as opposed to you. Now, when I say lost a deal, this could be a promotion. This could be, let's say, an actual business deal. It could be a client. Just in general, you believe somebody that deserved it less than you got something. How many of you would say yes to this one? And once again, chat is a little bit delayed, but bear with me. And as I get to see the chat coming in, I'll be able to answer as well. Okay. Perfect. A few times. Yeah, Tony says yes. Cornell, yeah. So generally this one as well, I think most software developers have had some type of experience with this, right? For the better or worse. Now, what if I ask another question? Who here, right, has sent a proposal that got ghosted? And I know for a fact a lot of you are going to say yes to this because I was actually in this exact pile, you know, when I first started off. So I know this is something that most software engineers have a lot of familiarity with, for the better or worse, right? So when I say ghosted, it can be something that maybe you've been talking to a prospect for a few days, you sent a message, they just left you on red, or you sent a proposal, they didn't get back to you, you followed up, and they kind of just ghosted you, and you started feeling like, you know, a little awkward that, okay, I don't want to bother this person, but they just completely left me on red or just ghosted me. Oh, I see a lot of yeses on this one as well. Perfect. Okay. And who here has done months of work for a client who paid less than what you're worth, right? This can be something where you've done months of work potentially for free, or you maybe signed an agreement, right? And then scope creep came, you did a lot more work than you initially signed up for, and you didn't get paid as nearly as much as at least you thought you were going to get paid for, right? Once again, yes, I'm seeing a lot of yeses here. And case in point, these are all things that most software engineers have done, okay? And understand that this is all happening not necessarily because you cannot sell, but rather this is happening, all of these things, the way you're losing deals, the way you're getting ghosted, the way you're not knowing what you're going to charge, is most likely stemming from the fact that you are having the particular conversation that you need to have backwards. So let me show you what I mean by this. Generally speaking, the trajectory that a software engineer takes is as follows. They build for months, right? They try to find somebody that gets interested in whatever they built. They ask you for your price. You pretty much fumble that conversation. They ghost you, and then you go back to square one. Next time, if you try to do it a little differently, most often than not, you're still going to fumble at one point listed here. Okay, this is the journey that most software engineers take. And this is why so many quit after one or two tries. Later, I'm going to show you the exact framework that one of our members used in Code to CEO to close a $16,000 client on his second ever sales call. But first, let me first explain why everything you are doing currently for your sales process is backwards. Now, since you all answered yes to all the aforementioned questions, we're going to cover exactly how to fix them. To do that, we need to set some ground rules so you get the most out of this particular workshop. I need you to take notes, not on a computer, but physical notes, okay? Pen and paper. I need you to stay until the end so you can get all the information, plus have time for the Q&A So make sure you ask questions. Don't be afraid to drop them in the meantime as I'm presenting. There's a separate Q&A tab that it will essentially aggregate all the questions. And of course, the most important thing about all of this is if you take action on what it is that I'm explaining, okay? Information doesn't mean anything if you do not take action. Once again, if you have the information and action, you get results. If you have information alone, it's only just a motivational, inspirational thing. It makes you feel good, the chemicals in your brain, but it doesn't actually change your life, okay? And you are in the right room if you want more clients, if sales calls feel a little awkward for you, if you feel like you are undercharging, and if you feel like you are losing deals that you should technically win. And of course, this all if you're a software engineer. You belong here. This is not for you if you think sales is going to take zero effort, if you think you're going to sell without talking to people, and if you want some type of magical sentence that you're going to say and you're going to start closing everybody. That's not how that works. That is not what sales is, okay? Now, for those of you who don't know me, let me give a little bit of a quick introduction so you understand my journey in sales as a software engineer in particular. So I'm Bigo. I started off already in tech for over a decade now. This was back in 2017 when we won the Los Angeles Regional Championship on my robotics team. After the fact, I went into the public, and then the private sector from NASA to Fortune 500 Consulting. Started off as a junior dev, making low six figures. In 3 years, transitioned to being a manager. This entire essentially journey from 3 years going from a junior to a manager was all about sales as well, because I had to sell myself to be able to get these promotions. If you take a look at me, technically speaking, there were a lot of other managers who were, or even senior engineers who were technically better than me, okay? Now, after the fact, I actually quit to found my own firm, AB Analytics. It's a B2B AI consulting firm located down here in Los Angeles. And in just the month of February, this is how much revenue we did. Once again, all of this to say that when it comes to sales, I know exactly what worked in a corporate. I know exactly what worked in a B2B context as well as a B2C. So when it comes to sales, I've gotten really acclimated to what works and how everything works, specifically for a software engineer. And everything that I'm going to be discussing today is the exact system that I built after losing deal after deal when I first was running my operations. It's how I built a multi-seven-figure actual consulting firm. It's how our members in Code to CEO are closing $10,000 to $50,000 deals. And if you follow exactly what I'm going to show you, you will, objectively speaking, close more deals. There's no other way around it. For software engineers, I need you to understand that sales compounds as opposed to a regular person, okay? If you understand sales as a software engineer, you immediately just 10x everything that you do. You become 10 times more valuable, objectively speaking. And every other skill that you have also becomes 10 times more valuable the moment you learn how to sell it. Because the biggest problem with software engineers is they do not know how to sell themselves. More in particular, how to showcase their actual value, okay? Prime examples I'm going to go through right now. Damir, one of our founders from Code to CEO, went from having no knowledge of sales whatsoever or even in business, went to a multi-five-figure paid pilot, about $50,000 worth. Sandra, you've probably already heard about her a lot. I bring her up a lot. She was over-leveraged, right, overemployed, working 2 separate jobs, now makes an income solely from the business. And when she first started off, she said, I do not want to sell. I only want to code. Fast forward 6 months later, she says, I don't want to code. I only want to sell, right? Paul, same exact thing, made more in the months of January and February of 2026 than he did at his entire 9 to 5 in the year prior to that. John, one of our top founders, had a $4.5 million buyout offer for his AI consulting firm as well, located in the Bay Area, specifically for HVAC companies. And Dom, of course, you guys know him as well, one of our essentially Code to CEO founders, Cloud Community Ambassador located in Sydney, and him, of course, very committed to sales as well over the course of the time that he was in Code to CEO, even managed to sell somebody on a plane that he was literally sitting next to. And once again, a couple more just examples here. Ian, who was completely terrified to ask people for money, had no knowledge of sales, was a very quote-unquote stereotypical software engineer in a sense of did not feel comfortable talking to individuals and selling them, and got a $10,000 prepaid pilot with a $5,000 deposit, okay? And I need you to understand that every single Code to CEO founder did this. So if you think, oh, I'm special, or oh, well, they didn't have my situation, I need you to get that out of your mind. Sales is not something that you're born with. It is a skill that you can learn, and I need engineers to understand this. And before we get into it, you also need to understand that if you have an existing offer, you are going to benefit way more from this masterclass. If you don't have an existing offer, that's still fine. Listen to it, understand it, but you're going to take the most away from this masterclass if you already have an existing offer. Now, let's get straight into it. First and foremost, we're going to talk about every single lie that you've been told about sales. Because sales, it is not what you think it is, okay? The biggest lie in tech when it comes to sales, and the reason why so many software engineers have a very negative connotation of it, is because people think sales is manipulation. It's psychology tricks. It's all these things, okay? And because most software engineers believe this exact lie, they tend to avoid calls, they tend to underprice, they tend to over-deliver for free, and of course, they stay broke at the end of the day. Many people think that sales is, let's say, about convincing people or being extroverted, right? Having tricks and tactics, being a little bit pushy and aggressive at times. And it's something that, you need to be born with it. It's a talent. But in reality, sales is really about diagnosing problems, being curious and having a curious mind, understanding that sales is a repeatable system. You can repeat constantly with each individual, that it's more about being consultative and helpful toward the individual that you're trying to sell to. And it's actually a skill that you can build over time and get really, really good at. And the reason I say all these things is because not too long ago, I saw this comment on YouTube. And while this individual was bold enough to actually post it, I know for a fact, after speaking to thousands of software engineers, a lot of people think this exact way. And the particular part that I want to highlight is this part right here. Most coders are socially awkward. They don't have many connections, and they are in general not skilled at all in sales and business talk, even if they are technically competent. And then he goes on to say, I lost my biggest project for reasons not related to quality, and I have a good portfolio with nice work done. And this exact individual, the reason I'm giving him an example is not to bash on him, but rather to showcase that this Pixel 1145 individual, there's thousands and thousands of software engineers in the same exact position as him. People who think that most software engineers are socially awkward and that sales is this natural thing you need to be born with, and that for the rest of your lives, you're going to suck at sales and it's not something that you can do, okay? We're going to break this belief down, because until we break this belief, you will not be able to properly progress with sales. Now, when it comes to sales, right, most of you think of it as, okay, I need to convince person A to buy from me or to buy something, right? But you need to flip it. It's not necessarily about convincing somebody to buy. Sales is all about you yourself need to understand their problem better than they do, okay? So let me say that again. It's not that that person in front of me, I need to convince them to buy from me. All I have to do, my goal is to understand their problem better than they do. That is all sales really is. Because people do not buy from you because you're clever, because you're whatever. People buy from people because they feel understood. When somebody feels understood, they get to trust you more, they get to like you more. And trust and being liked, it also increases the chances of being sold, right? So the most fundamental thing is feeling understood. That is the secret, quote unquote, to sales, okay? There are three beliefs that primarily destroy developers and their journey when it comes to acquiring clients, and it falls into three particular things. Number one, a lot of developers compare sales to lying. They think sales is lying. They think they have to make up fake testimonials. They think they have to say things. Part of this comes from the resume culture as well, because we tend to, whenever we're applying to jobs, puff up our resume to make it seem like we did a lot more than we actually did. And we think this is the same exact thing when it comes to sales, that we need to puff up ourselves or we need to puff up our offer or anything of that sort. But it is not. If you believe this, you will never ever sell. Because if you genuinely believe that sales is lying and you on that call are lying, you're subconsciously going to sabotage yourself because you don't want to do that. Second thing, people think that when on a sales call, the other person at the end is paying for your code. Nobody is paying for your code. Maybe at your 9 to 5, that's what you're getting paid for. But when it comes to actually selling something to another individual, to another human being, they do not care about your code. All they care about is the outcome. Now, if that outcome is dependent on your code, so be it. But all they really care about is the outcome. And third thing is when people think that, well, I'm not a salesperson, or I'm not a sales guy, or I didn't have sales experience. There is no such thing as a salesperson. Sales is a skill that everybody has, and most of you already sell in your day-to-day lives. Every single performance review you've been on, every single stand-up meeting you've been on, that is sales. Every single interview you've been on, that is also sales. We can take it outside of the context of software engineering, right? Dating, in the dating world, you're still selling yourself. If you move it out to going to buy a car and you're negotiating with the dealer, that is also sales. There's so many aspects of sales in your day-to-day life. It's just nobody calls it that because, once again, we have this negative connotation around what sales actually is. And understand that pretty much every single meeting you've ever been in was technically a sale, okay? And you sell every single day. Convincing your team to adopt a new framework, getting buy-in on your technical approach, negotiating your salary or trying to go for a raise, persuading a PM to change requirements, explaining why a certain deadline should move. These are all just in the terms of a 9 to 5, right? In the terms of, let's say, employment. But even telling your barber to reschedule a time to another day, that is still technically sales, okay? Understand that most things you do have an aspect of sales to them. And understand that 80% of all purchase decisions, okay, are driven by emotion. They are justified by logic after the fact, but they are driven by emotion. This is another really important point that not too many software engineers fully comprehend because we in nature tend to be a little bit more analytical, right? We're a lot more analytical. We take a look at things objectively, scientifically. We like data, and we're logic-oriented people. We like to think we are rational. However, most 80% of purchasing decisions are driven by our emotions, not by our logic. We use logic to justify them, but for the most part, they are driven by emotions. As a result, everything that you talk about, everything that you say, understand that fundamentally, there has to be an emotional context to things. For example, instead of maybe saying, this will save you $10,000 a year, sure, that's amazing. Logically, who wouldn't want that? But this frees up $10,000 that you can put, let's say, towards your daughter's college fund, especially if you've talked with a prospect and you understand that this is a particular thing they care about, okay? Now, this might be the portion where people might think it's manipulative or it's psychological tricks that you're using or you're lying. However, objectively speaking, if you know for a fact that they're going to save an extra $10,000 and that their daughter is going to go to college, there's nothing wrong with you saying this exact sentence because it is factually correct. And it is not manipulative. In fact, it is quite helpful because if you look at it objectively, you just helped somebody put $10,000 into their daughter's college fund. Okay? And once again, I'm going to keep drilling on this. Understand that sales is an emotional process. I know we believe that if we have the data over there, we show how good our technology stack is, we show how good our product is going to be, we show all those numbers and data. Sure, that's all great. But understand, without the emotional finesse of things, without that emotional factor, you will not be able to sell. The biggest driving force behind every decision is emotion. Logic is a justification, but not the driver. And even in a B2B context, you might think, okay, this applies to maybe B2C, business to consumer, right? Maybe if I see a TikTok ad or if I see a Facebook ad on some physical product, maybe that's what BEGO means. No, even in a B2B context, in a professional meeting with business owners, the buy is still going to come from feelings and not logic. They are not going to buy value per se. They are buying peace of mind, okay? Because value is extremely subjective. There's things such as, so there's a thing that's called perceived value. That's a little bit more appropriate to say. But value for each individual is very subjective. Most people are going to be buying peace of mind. If you cannot move them emotionally, your logic does not matter. The only time you will be able to sell only strictly through logic is maybe 1 out of 1,000 people who are just as rational as you and who only truly care about it just enough as you do, okay? But for the most part, you won't be able to sell too many. And understand that when it comes to the selling process as a whole, okay? The subconscious is always going to weigh the negatives more so than the positives. Meaning, losing $500 is going to weigh and hurt a lot more than winning $500. As a result, while you are pitching, while you are in the process of a sales call or you're selling somebody, in their mind, they're thinking, okay, can I trust this person? What if I get scammed? What if this doesn't work? Well, what else could I spend this money on? Actually, what does my spouse even think about this? And is this person going to disappear after I pay? So in their mind, they are always thinking subconsciously about the negatives, about what could go wrong. Because remember, that is worse than the positives for them, right? And they actually did a study on this, by the way. They essentially, when people were gambling, they measured that those who lose $500 experienced about, don't quote me on this, but I think it was 5 times like an emotional intensity as opposed to people who won $500, right? And this isn't just strictly for gamblers and gambling addicts, it's just in general for pretty much everyday people. Now, another particular important point. People think that when it comes to sales, right, it's just, okay, just give me X money and then you get Y service. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. Every single sale has a hidden cost to it, okay? If you're selling something for $15,000, the individual in question is not just giving you $15,000. That $15,000 has to come from something, okay? That's going to come away from maybe their family vacation. That's going to come away maybe from a mortgage. That's going to come away from a savings goal. This is why it needs to be emotionally justifiable, okay? You can say, if you give me $15,000, I'm going to save you $50,000 over the next year, let's say. But they might say, yeah, but I was going to use this $15,000 to go see my grandma in, let's say, halfway across the world. How do you go about logically justifying that? Well, yeah, but you'll make $50,000. But then he says, well, I want to see my grandma. That's worth a lot more than that $50,000. This is why everything you say needs to be emotionally justifiable. Because whenever you are asking for money, right, understand they're not just giving you a 15K. They're taking that 15K away from other things that they can and maybe they want to do. So your entire job in this cycle is to make the inaction cost more. The inaction of them not giving you the $15,000 should be a lot more than the family vacation, the mortgage, and the savings goal. Essentially, you want to make it seem that, and this is actually factually correct as well, the price of inaction should always be more expensive than your service. You see here negative infinity, a little bit of a hyperbole, but my exact point is anything that you do, anything that you're going to offer, you need to make it evident that inaction is more expensive than your service, no matter how much your particular service or product costs. Understand that. So let's do a little bit of a recap of what we talked about in session 1, right? We have about 7-8 sessions in total. So sales is all about helping another individual. It is not manipulation. It is not these psychology tricks that you use to lie to them. It is a system, okay? And understand that while logic is important, logic justifies things. You need numbers, you need data, and we as software engineers love these. Emotion comes first, okay? We need to sell emotionally. Logic is good to have, and you need both. I'm not saying you need one or the other. You need both, but more heavily weighing on the emotion. And understand that you already sell every single day. You simply just don't call it that because you don't think about it consciously. Now, in a few minutes, I'm actually going to show you the exact words to say when somebody hits you with a, let me think about it, right? Because a lot of you might be asking, okay, but what about objections? What do we do when it comes to objections? Because a sales call doesn't always go as smoothly as you're laying it out. We're going to get into that. But first, okay, let's talk about the doctor framework. And this is essentially the framework to understand, because once you understand this, you'll realize that the best salespeople in the world never actually sell in the way that you think they do, okay? So I want you to remove this whole aspect of being a salesperson, and I want you to start thinking of being a doctor, okay? Now, what does this look like in comparison? Well, a salesperson might pitch a solution first. They're going to talk 70% of the time. They're going to convince you to buy. They're going to handle objections after the fact, and they're going to chase the close. Any of you that have gone to a car dealership and you've met a very annoying person trying to sell you a car, they were an exact salesperson. However, what happens when you go to a doctor's office, right? Well, they diagnose the problem that you're having. They pretty much listen 70% of the time. You ask for the prescription, they just give you the recommendations. Objections don't really quite exist because you're already informed. And closing is the next natural step. Paul, one of our founders inside Code to CEO, he used this exact doctor framework, and what ended up happening is literally closed a client by simply explaining the problem. And the client just said yes. Client pretty much just sold themselves on it. Okay? And let's understand why this model works so well and why people don't talk about it enough. When you go to a doctor's office and you are in pain, right? You are feeling pain, be it physical, be it emotional, be it mental. When a doctor perfectly describes your symptoms, you don't question the prescription they're going to offer you. You're not going to ask for a discount on surgery if you need it. And you're not going to say, let me think about it, because you understand it is urgent. You say, what do I need to do? Because you understand fundamentally, the doctor understands you. They perfectly describe your symptoms. You know they are credible. You trust them to solve your problem. The way it works is, think of it as from a diagnosis to pretty much a prescription flow, right? Initially, you build a little bit of rapport. You diagnose the pain. You agitate the cost. You prescribe a fix, and then you close. A good sales call should feel like a visit to a doctor. Now, whether the sales call is remote or whether the sales call in person does not matter. A good sales call should feel like a visit to the doctor. Now, there's a golden ratio here to understand, and it is the talk ratio rule. You, as a salesperson or as a person offering something, should talk only 20 to 30% of the time. Absolute maximum. I cannot stress this enough. And all of you should be recording your calls, right? Transcribe them and see how many words you have spoken compared to how many words were spoken total. It should be 20%, maximum about 30%, okay? The client needs to open up at what's not working. You need to reflect the very exact language back to them. So if they're using certain terms, you need to say that back to them. You need to offer clarity. They say that's exactly what we need. And even without a close, the entire point of this is that they leave trusting you, okay? In terms of a ratio, 30-70 is the golden rule. You talk 30% of the time, they talk 70% of the time. The more they talk, the more they will buy from you. Understand that. It's a golden rule. Dom, one of our Code to CEO founders, literally said the exact thing, said it was a discussion about their business. We talked about their problems, and working together was an obvious next step. Notice how in all of these things that I'm bringing up, working together and closing becomes an obvious next step. It's not necessarily a sale. It's just naturally what ends up happening. That's exactly what we're going for. Now, where a lot of developers fall into a trap here is they'll say something like, okay, in a sales call, let me show you all the features we built to, let's say, solve the particular problem that you talked about, right? Where in reality, what they really should lead with is, tell me about the problem that keeps you up at night, and go deep into it. What have you tried? Have you tried to fix it? How have you tried to fix it? Why did it fail? Did it fail? Dive deeper and deeper and get them to talk more and more and more. The more they talk, the easier of a time that you're going to have to sell. So understand the golden ratio. 30% of the time you're listening, 70% of the time they are talking. Another kind of word for this is consultative closing, right? There's no clever psychology tricks involved. There's no manipulation. You simply have a problem, and I understand that problem really, really well. So the only natural conclusion that both of us come to is that we tend to work together. I know your problem. You trust me. What's there to do outside of working together? And this is why introverts can actually even close high-ticket deals, because I know a lot of software engineers that might say, we're introverted. How do we go about it? Well, you're not necessarily selling, right? It's literally a natural conclusion to the conversation that you had. And once again, I need you to understand, this is not a personality. This is a process, okay? Now, does this sort of sound familiar with, I know a lot of you here right now, type yes if you've been the one talking more than the prospect in a sales call. If you found yourself, not being able to shut up and just consistently start talking and over explaining things and start using technical jargon, and just you found yourself to kind of be a little difficult to just stop and let the prospect talk. There we go. Andre, we get a yes. I'm expecting a decent amount of you to say yes to this because, like I said, when I first started off too, same exact way. I would get uncomfortable. I would get nervous with the silence or with just, the awkwardness. And I would just keep talking because that's what we do. When we're nervous, we just keep talking, right? So most likely a lot of you have also done the same exact thing when you found yourself talking more than a prospect. So to give a little bit of a recap of what we just talked about in session 2, be the doctor. You're not a salesperson. You are a doctor. You want to diagnose the problem first, and then you want to prescribe whatever solution second. Listen more. 20-80, 30-70. Don't exceed 30-70 rule, right? They talk, you listen, and go for the natural close. When the diagnosis is right, the close happens itself. However, let me add a note here. Do not ever in your life leave a sales call without asking for a close. Even if it comes to a natural close, do not ever leave that sales call without specifically asking for it. Drill this into your head. No matter how well the call is going, or no matter how poor the call is going, always at the end of it, if the prospect doesn't even engage it themselves, right? If they don't do it first, if they don't ask about pricing or how do we get started first, you need to do it. Okay? Something like everything we talked about, how does it sound? Does it, fit with what we discussed? And then you move on. But never, ever end the sales call without specifically asking for the close if they haven't already engaged it. Remember that. Drill that in. Now, session 3, and arguably, in my opinion, the most important session and the most important concept to understand in sales. This is the one that I have seen developers struggle with the most, even to this day, with people that I work with for a decent amount of time. And it is something that is so deeply ingrained in the software engineer's psyche that it takes a decent amount of time to kind of break down and establish a new kind of psyche for it. But we're going to be talking about framing and authority. More specifically, the frame that you set. This is something that I have seen software engineers struggle with a lot, and it's also the biggest multiplier when it comes to closing clients. If you can control the frame, you can control every single outcome. So let's get straight into this. In any situation, even outside of sales, whoever controls the frame will control the sale, okay? You might be wondering, Bigo, what is framing? Well, framing, in the simplest terms, is the context that you set before information is exchanged. So I want you to think of hostage negotiations, okay? They are one of the best salespeople on the planet. They set conditions where any outcome is going to be in their frame because they're going to control what gets discussed, how, and when. If you yourself do not control the frame, your prospect is going to control the frame. And that means they get to see what is discussed, they get to decide the how and the when, meaning you become the person who is now being sold to in a sense. Let's see what this looks like in action, okay? If you have no frame, and I want you guys to actually put a yes down below if this has happened to you. The client sets the agenda, they hop on a call, they start talking, price is discussed first, they instantly say, okay, how much does it cost? They ask some random questions that you answer, they compare you to other competitors, and then you chase after them for a decision. Whereas what actual frame control looks like is you set the frame in the beginning of the call. Second they hop on, you set the frame, put them in a box. Value is established first before any price is discussed. You guide the conversation such that you take them towards a particular point. You become the only option to them. They don't compare you to competitors anymore. And they ask you, how do we get started? Or how does it work? Okay? This is why frame control is so important. And once again, if there's anything you guys can take away from today's workshop, it's understanding frame control. You can do so many things well in a sales call or even in-person sales, even in life in general. But if you do not fundamentally understand how to frame yourself, you will suffer. And the reason this is so difficult for software engineers is because their entire lives, from university to working at a 9-to-5, the frame that they have had is that of an employee. It's, I get Jira tickets, I do my job, and that's it. But to be a business owner, To be somebody that's going out there selling deals, making money like that, the frame you need to have is that of an expert. It's that of a confident person who can solve problems and provide solutions, not that of somebody who waits for things to be given to them. Okay? Now, how do we actually frame ourselves? Okay? Did I just go in and say I'm a full stack developer? No. This is what most software engineers do, and it backfires. The frame you need to sort of have is, once again, I'm the guy or I'm the girl that makes your biggest problem go away. Obviously, not like cringe or cliche like that. You're not going to go and say that, but in deep in your mind, this is the type of frame you need to have as you're approaching these things. Okay? Because understand, clients don't care about your code. They don't buy your code. They buy outcomes. If the outcome happens to be dependent on the code, so be it. But they fundamentally care about the outcome, not your code, not your technical skills, okay? So it's extremely important to create a really good first impression, because that first impression is going to create the frame for the entire dynamic, for the entire relationship, right? Client and business relationship. Every interaction with your brand, a lot of you are the brand for now, is going to be a micro sale. So the physical presentation, right? What you're wearing, your posture, are you groomed or not? Maybe your digital presence, your LinkedIn, your website, your email signature even, your video, background, lighting, camera, audio, all these things. Each detail stacks towards a yes or a no. I'll tell you a story of when I first started having a little bit of success and I got a little, too crazy with, I wanted to go out and buy some stuff. I was a little materialistic when I first made my money. And one of the biggest deals that I lost was because of a very poor first impression that I gave. I went to a client's dinner with a very particular Rolex, and the client instantly judged me and made the assumption that I am just like not a trustworthy individual because of my choice in watches, the way that I was dressed, right? The way I presented myself. I had very good style, but the one thing that was a turnoff for that particular client was the watch that I was wearing. Physical presentation matters a lot, especially the higher up you go in this world. People spend more and more time taking a look at these things. There's been times where I have literally done deal with people, and after the fact, they told me that they did the deal with me because I had shaven my neck, I had cleaned my neck, I showed up proper. Of course, you right now maybe don't have to worry about this to this extent. However, understand every single small detail that you can control, it is a micro sale. It is a representation of you. And each detail will stack towards a yes or a no. And the more yeses you have in your favor, well, why not do that? Why not show up having as many yeses stacked in your favor as possible? Because guess what? Your competition is not going to care about it to this degree. And frankly, all of this is really a one-time fix. You spend maybe a day or 2 days on it and you have it ready, okay? When it comes to first impressions, it takes about 7 seconds for a prospect to decide if they are going to trust you or not. This is true for all manners of life, dating, business relationships, even regular friendships. It takes 7 seconds for somebody to, quote unquote, judge a book by its cover, right? They're going to spend 7 seconds. They're going to make an assumption about you. They're going to put you in a particular box, and they're going to say, Bob is this type of individual. Strictly from the way you presented yourself, the way you talked, and everything else. So why not control these things to the best of our abilities and make it such that we have as many yeses stacked in our favor as possible? Once again, a lot of people don't think about this too much because obviously it can get a little over the top. I'm not saying become too overly obsessed with these things, but understand there are certain things you can control, and 80-20 rule applies here. Spend a little bit of time to get maximum effort. It doesn't take too long to groom, and just prepare yourself properly. Now, why do we care so much about first impressions and framing even? Because it is what we need for trust, okay? But what is trust, right? Fundamentally, what is it? Is it credibility? Like, okay, is it more about, do you know what you're doing? Is it maybe the reliability? Like, are you actually going to follow through? Or is it more about intimacy? Do they feel safe sharing whatever information they're going to feel, right? What is it? Well, trust is all about framing. All of these things matter, sure, but fundamentally, you cannot have trust without a proper frame, hence the actual frame we have here. Let me explain a little bit about this. The easiest way that you can build trust with a complete stranger is to show understanding of that stranger's problem. Understanding hints at competence, and obviously competence is valued by all individuals. Whenever that happens, people tend to actually trust you more. Think about it the first time you saw your doctor, a complete stranger to you. You might have heard a few things from here and there, but what made you trust that individual was the fact that they had a complete understanding of your particular problem. If you went to a doctor and they didn't understand what problem you were having, they didn't know your symptoms, you're going to say, okay, this guy's a bad doctor, I'm going to go to another one. Same exact thing applies here. The biggest thing about trust is the frame that you create. If you create a proper frame where the individual understands that you understand them and you are competent, they will trust you significantly easier than anybody else, okay? A good example of this are, once again, I'm going to refer back to the hostage negotiators. They are one of the best salespeople on the planet, okay? They have to be. It's literal human life that they're essentially trading, that they're selling. And if you pay attention to how they do things, they never actually sell. Only thing they focus on is how do they set the frame. And because framing determines what's going to get discussed, what's going to get ignored, what's going to be an expensive deal versus a cheap deal, who has the actual authority in the room, and whether people are going to see you as a vendor or simply an advisor. Okay, so like a Fiverr developer or an actual business partner. Now, I want you guys to answer in the chat right now. Who set the agenda for your last call? If it was the prospect, then you most likely already lost that call before you even started. And this is the best way to kind of conduct this frame test. Take a look at your previous calls that you've had. If the prospect set the frame for the call, if you let them take over, you most likely lost that deal. Once again, if you let the prospect set the actual frame for that call, you most likely lost that deal. I would bet against you as opposed to I would bet for you, okay? And another thing that framing does that not a lot of people actually understand initially is framing changes the price perception. It changes how a particular price is viewed, okay? If without frame you go in and you say, my rate is $150 an hour, most people are going to compare you, okay, I'll just go to Upwork and get somebody that's going to do it for 20 bucks an hour. However, if you create the frame around, look, this problem is costing you $500,000 a year, they're going to be like, holy, I'm losing $500,000 a year. They're going to ask, how do we start? How do we fix this? Understand, it is the same exact skill you are using, okay? Same exact thing technically that you're going to be offering, but it is a very different frame with what you wrapped up with. And it is literally the 10 times the price difference you can charge, okay? Once again, if there's one thing you take away, it's this, how to properly frame things. Framing also changes how they see you, okay? What a lot of software engineers have difficulty with is whenever they're pitching themselves, whenever they find themselves in certain rooms, in certain social interactions, they're always seen as a vendor. Oh, he's just a dev who builds websites for me, or he's just, this person or that person. You are viewed as a commodity. You are compared on price, and you're essentially a line item at the end of the day. What framing helps you do is you become an advisor to these individuals, okay? You become a partner. It becomes more of an outcome, and you are chosen more so for your authority and not because you are the cheapest option, okay? So instead of saying, I build websites, the right way to frame it is, I help law firms convert 3 times more leads with AI intake. Just a completely different example here, but so you understand what framing means in an actual real life setting. And for you to frame properly, you need to understand that language is your weapon, okay? The language that you use, whether be it subconsciously or consciously, in sales calls or in person, you need to understand that it can make or break the frame. So never say, if we work together. That comes from a point of weakness, okay? Say, when we get started. The assumption is you are going to work together. You might think this has nothing to do with it, But subconsciously, once again, understand that the person is always weighing the negative over the positive. So whenever you are speaking in absolutes, whenever you are speaking from a confident standpoint, it showcases what? That you understand the problem, and also it showcases that you are competent, okay? And competence sells. You don't say my price is, you say the investment is, okay? You never say, do you have any questions for me? You want to go for, does this make sense, okay? Of course, a lot of these are caveats, like there's certain situations, and I'll explain that more later on, but for now, take this to heart. You never say, I think I can help. If you know genuinely you can help, you say, here's how we solve this, okay? Your words will frame your reality, so you need to choose them deliberately, because the way you say something can be the difference between them deciding to work with you and them deciding not to work with you. So let me give examples of what weak versus powerful language actually looks like. So weak would be like, well, I think we could maybe, as opposed to, here's what we're going to do. Does that sound okay? Sounds good? Let's get started. If you're interested, when we get started, my rate is $100 an hour. So if we do, it's going to take about 40 hours, blah, blah, blah. The investment is $15,000. Let me know if you're interested, or, I will send you the invoice tonight. Make sure you take care of it. Speak in absolutes, okay? People understand another thing about most people is the general population are followers, okay? If we want to bring up the analogy of a lion and a sheep, general population are followers. Whenever you speak in absolutes, whenever you speak with authority, whenever you speak with conviction in your voice, the natural biology of a human being goes into following mode, okay? Because we, at the end of the day, are social creatures. Whenever we see somebody that can lead us somewhere, we want to follow them. This is true for everybody, okay? Even if you yourself are a leader in one thing, you are most likely going to be a follower in another. Just how human works. There's not necessarily anything wrong with it. It's just the way things work. This is why you can have certain charismatic individuals leading nations and leading countries with millions of people, right? Same exact reason. It's the power that they use. Pay careful attention to how every single presidential candidate speaks, be it no matter the country. Take a look at the superpowers like US, Russia, right? They always speak in powerful language. They speak in absolutes. Even if they have no clue what they're saying, even if they don't know exactly what they're going to be doing, they still speak in powerful language and absolutes, okay? Understand that as well. Now, I'm not saying you need to go out and lie, but you need to adopt powerful language in your calls. Now, when it comes to, you might say, okay, Bigo, but what if the conversation is about pricing? How do I speak in absolutes on that, right? Like, what if they're objectively just saying pricing is not worth it? Understand that if they are talking with you, they are on a sales call, pricing is almost never going to be the real objection. Value is. If pricing is the actual real objection, you do not have a sales problem, you have a qualification problem. You need to properly qualify your prospects before they even hop on a call with you or before you even go to pitch them something, because that should have been taken care of beforehand. Anybody that is on a call with you, assume they are able to afford it. Now, how do we create a value price frame? This is the most important frame to have in a sales call, because of course, everybody's main objection is most likely going to be about money. That's going to be the most popular objection. But it's never really that it's a pricing problem. It's more so that it's a value problem, okay? If you can guarantee somebody $500,000 in savings and you charge them $50K, obviously they're going to say yes to that. That's a 10x ROI for them, okay? But it's all about how do we make this as easily understandable as possible, and how do we make this as trustable as possible. And one of the ways you understand that is you don't make it about your hours. You don't make it about how many hours you're going to put in, but you make it about their particular outcome. You need to make the value so obvious that the price that you give feels like a complete steal, okay? Always remember, if they are on a call with you, if they took time out of their day to click yes and accept that invitation and hop on a call, or they met you in person, there is over a 90% chance that they can 100% afford your services, okay? Understand one thing in sales and with relation to pricing. If somebody pushes back on price, it is almost most certainly a value problem. If it is not, then you have a qualification problem as opposed to a sales problem, okay? Now, to do a little bit of a recap on session 3, what did we talk about? Framing. Control the frame. Extremely important, okay? The most important takeaway for all of you watching. Set the agenda, guide everything, use powerful language. You need to be the leader that they follow, okay? Build authority, right? Specificity over your credentials. Your credentials don't matter here. It's all about specificity and outcomes. What can they get out of it, not what you can provide necessarily. Your language matters as well. Powerful words. Assumptive framing, okay? Stray away from I think or I hope. That does not breed confidence. Imagine you're going to a doctor, you have a life-changing surgery that they need to do on you, right? And the doctor says, I think maybe the surgery will go well. I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll live and we see. Like if your surgeon says that to you as you're about to go, and let's say get surgery on your heart, what are you going to think? You're going to go in there stressed thinking, are you going to make it out alive? But if the surgeon says, don't worry about anything, 100% guaranteed, like you are going to be fine. We've done this so many times. You are going to be fine. Sits you down, looks you in the eyes and tells you, that gives you confidence because now that person signifies competence, okay? Now, coming up, we're going to dive into the 3-minute silence technique that closes more deals than any script ever will. So I need you to stay with me to get to that. But in the meantime, let's talk about the $1 million sales script. And I'm going to give you the step-by-step, line-by-line, nothing left out. However, I do want to say that this is not theory, okay? This is the exact script that I use to close multi-6-figure deals. It's how our members inside Code to CEO close multi-5-figure deals. If you follow this script, you will close more deals, period. But warning, okay? This does not mean you're going to copy this word for word like a robot. That's not what I'm saying. Every single sales call is a new interaction. While there is a repeatable system to things, understand behind every single sales call, there's a human being. That human being has different interests, different wants, different needs, different problems. You will naturally have to be dynamic. A sales call is not static. It is very dynamic. Things change. You need to adapt to things, okay? So what I need you to take away from this script isn't necessarily the exact words that I use or necessarily the exact flow, but rather the emotional journey that I take the prospect on. That's what I want you to pay careful attention to, okay? There is 7 steps, well, technically 8 really. We'll call it step 4.5. You'll see that down the line, to a sales call. This could be in person or this could be remote. Let me do a quick little coconut water break because my throat is extremely parched. Okay, so the first step is building a rapport with the prospect. You then set the frame. You then conduct a discovery. You then agitate the pain point. You present your solution. You reveal the price, and then you close them, okay? So let's talk about this. Building rapport, the first step. A lot of the times when you guys are going to be hopping on a call, maybe you'll know the person. So you don't need to build as much rapport. But what if they're a complete stranger and it's the first time seeing you, okay? You need to lower the walls. You need to be able to build a bridge, okay? And there's certain rules when it comes to building rapport. You want to have small talk. Not necessarily long talk. You don't want to get too much into it because obviously you need to show respect for their time as well as yours. I generally recommend a good sweet spot is about 2 to 3 minutes of small talk. Once again, you want to show that you value your time and that you are the authority. Of course, there are caveats to every rule. If you're going to be doing a big 3-year-long deal that's going to be worth $50 million, you don't want to just skip and get straight into it. You maybe want to take them out, spend, few hours with them, all these things. So this is what I say when I mean it's a little bit dynamic, okay? All of these things that you see in front of you, you need to apply it to your specific context and situation. If it's a 40-minute, 45-minute call, you need to show that your time is valuable and you are the authority. So make the rapport building 2 to 3 minutes. But if it's a very big deal that's going to take a few, let's say, weeks to set up and get done, obviously you want to take a little bit of a longer time to set that up. Now, what do you talk about? You can literally talk about anything, okay? You can talk about the company, talk about industry news. You can talk about their background if they're on, Google Meets meeting or something. Especially if they're on a video call, look around their space, comment on something. Maybe they have a guitar in the back, or maybe they have a good, family photo or something like that. You just want to make small talk. The goal with the small talk is to put them in a very positive mood and have friendly back and forth conversation. Feel free to crack jokes. Just be yourself a little bit, as if you're talking to a friend, or as if, you just met somebody, you're trying to learn more about them. Don't be afraid to, just be a little bit more daring as well with regards to the things you talk about. The goal is, end in all, put them in a positive mood, show them that you're human, show them that, you're not trying to do anything evil or do anything bad. That's all really is when it comes to building rapport. Once again, there's some easy topics you can do. Their company, if they had any recent wins or any news, their background, where they're from, their career, something visible. This is one of my favorites, right? Especially if I'm going in person or if I'm going to hop on a meeting, I tend to look at the area they're in, the environment, because once again, a lot of the times people's external environment very much displays their internal environment, right? So that's why I'll take a look at what's their background on the camera. Do they have stuff decorated on the walls? Are there any certificates hanging? Something of that sort. Now, what kills rapport? Well, spending 15 minutes on small talk that doesn't lead anywhere because they just assume, okay, this guy's not taking it seriously. He doesn't value his time. Another thing, don't let them go on tangents about your product. If you're having a small talk and all of a sudden they say, oh yeah, so how much does it cost? Instantly shut that down, right? If they try to jump ahead, you say, we'll get to that later in the call. And don't ask big open-ended questions just yet. Remember, we're only doing a little bit of small talk, okay? Now, step 2, after our small talk is done, okay, the initial portion is done, we need to set the frame. The most important part of the entire call is right here, setting the frame. We want to prime them, structure the call, and always get consent. Let me explain what that means. This is a frame setting script that you can follow, but once again, it's less about the exact words on here and more about the emotional journey you are taking them on. An example would be, I'm going to ask you a few questions about your business, your goals, and your challenges. Then I'll explain how we can help and how we can get started working together. Does this sound like a plan? We did 2 things here. Number 1, we set the frame. I'm going to ask you questions, so you better listen to my questions and you better answer them properly. Based on the questions, I'm going to explain how we can help and how we can get started working together. And then you ask for consent. Does this sound like a plan? Now, you might be asking, Bago, why do you, say that? Why do you want them to confirm it? Well, because every single yes that they give you primes the next yes. And studies actually show this, by the way. The more yeses somebody say, the higher the chance that they're going to say yes at the very end of the call. Very interesting how that works. I shared this a long time ago too, but you can go and look it up. Very interesting psychological concept. So whenever you say how we can get started, what you already do in their head is you just make the assumption that you guys are going to work together, okay? Because you say, how can we get started? Not if we get started. And one thing, this is a mistake that I used to make. Never say if you're a good fit, okay? This might come off as, oh, like, if you're a good fit, you'll get to work with me. Like, it might sound good in your head, but in reality, all it really does is just signifies to the person, okay, this is a free coaching session, then I'm just going to waste his time. So don't say if you're a good fit. If they're on that call, they should most likely already be a good fit unless you get some type of red flag from them. But always start with the how we can get started language that assumes you guys are going to work together, okay? And then at the very end, say, does this sound like a plan or everything, sound good? Just prime them to say yes. The more yeses you can make them say, the higher the likelihood that they'll say yes at the end. And I call this the yes ladder, okay? So you say, ready to get started? Yeah. Sound like a plan? Yes. Does this make sense? Yes. Want me to tell you more? Yes. Should we move forward with this? Yes. Always, always, always ask stuff that get them to say yes. And obviously, you want to ask them stuff that's going to make them say yes. Don't ask them a question that's going to make them say no, okay? I have to point this out. Now, I want you guys take about 60 seconds. This will also be a good little water break session if you need to take it. Create and type in chat your own frame setting script. If you don't have it, try to model what you have here. But if you do have something similar, you can put it into the chat. Okay. So once again, the particular one, I'm going to ask you a few questions about your business, your goals, and your challenges. Then I'll explain how we can help and we can get started working together. Sound like a plan? Christian says this is from dating coaches. Yeah, everything business. So business and sales are extremely parallel to dating, because in both cases, your client or your prospect has objections, needs to see the value in you, right? Except one is in a business context, one is just in a relationship context. But it's the same exact thing. This is why, if you take a look at most business individuals, they also have, for the most part, successful, or they're good at relationships as well, because it's transferable skills. If you're a good salesperson, you're going to have luck in dating as well. And it is pretty cool how everything ties together, Christian, as you pointed out. So let's take a little bit of time, put into chat what your frame setting script is. And after we put that in, we'll move on to the next exact section. And yes, Blush, it's the micro compliances. You're essentially training them to say yes. The more yeses they say, the higher the likelihood that they'll say yes to the next exact thing. So while you guys are kind of thinking of this and putting it down in the chat, I want you to also keep in mind that the frame that you create, okay, understand that it should also be as bulletproof as possible. There will be certain prospects that you'll come across that will test you, okay? They will purposely test you when you set the frame. You might set the frame, they'll say, okay, it sounds like a plan, but can we first get started with this, or can I first ask you a question? What you do then is you have to set the frame again, reframe it. We'll get to your questions at the end. I'm going to start off with asking you a few questions. Understand? Yes, perfect. Let's get started. Okay? So while you guys are doing that, there we go. I'm going to look with you at some issues you're in. I was breaking up into 2 calls to go back and research, but maybe I need to tighten up to 1 call. Yeah, don't do 2 calls. We'll get into the Q&A section later. Save that and you'll save that for later. But for now, just keep this in mind and create your own frame setting script. You can take this for kind of like motivation purposes as well as just inspiration, but definitely have your own frame setting script. Okay? Now, step number 3, the discovery process of our sales call. This is where the sale is either won or lost. Technically speaking, that really happens during the framing, but this is where we kind of know for certain if we're going to do the sell or not, okay? And understand, discovery is not only about learning about their problem, it's really more about making them feel heard, that you're there and you understand the problem, okay? There's a couple of questions you can ask. We're going to call it the discovery question stack. But in reality, understand that you don't necessarily have to copy these questions word for word. Understand the emotions they will create in the person, okay? Anything I'm giving you right now, understand it from an emotional context. So what's working right now in your business? What's the biggest challenge you're facing? How long has this been a problem? What have you tried before? What happens if nothing changes, right? Here's why these questions are actually so important, because of what they do when it comes to the emotional standpoint. When you ask what's working, it puts them in a positive state first. Okay, they think about the positives. When you say about the biggest challenge, they now get into a negative mindset. Now they start talking about their pain point, right? And they hand it to you. When you say, how long has this been happening, right? Or how long have you been trying to solve this? It's going to reveal the depth and the urgency of the problem at hand. And they're going to think about it more. Like, wow, we spent X amount of time on this and I still have this problem. What have you tried before? It makes them think about their failure, okay? It showcases that they tried to do this on their own, or they tried to do it before and they failed, which means, once again, chances are if they try it alone again on their own, it's most likely going to fail. And then you really agitate it. What if nothing changes, right? It makes a very impactful, painful type of resonance inside them where they realize, okay, inaction is going to be extremely painful here for me. And a really good way to do this constantly throughout the call is what I call using the mirror technique. Anytime a prospect is saying something, for example, our leads are just falling off after the first call in a very particular language, you always want to mirror that exact thing back to them. That just kind of like doubles down on the pain, okay? So you said your leads are falling off after the first call. Walk me through what that actually looks like. Okay. And understand that whenever anybody's talking about a pain point, never, ever, ever, ever accept the first answer. This is another really important thing that most software engineers make the mistake of not doing. Second, you get a response back, you think it's the final response. It is not. Imagine how uncomfortable it is for somebody to be there on a call and essentially talking about their biggest problems to a complete stranger. They're naturally going to be on guard. They're not going to tell you the first full answer right off the bat, okay? So you want to dig a little deeper. If they say, well, we need more leads. Well, why? Why do you need more leads? Well, because our sales team can't actually close too many times, so we need more leads. So at least if there's closing 1%, we can get more clients. Well, turns out we don't know who our ideal customer is because it's not that the sales team is bad, it's because we get a lot of bad prospects that come in, okay? You want to always dig down deeper and deeper and deeper. And you can go down so deep, right? I've had certain calls where the prospect has cried, has been emotionally vulnerable. That's because if you dig the why down deeper, like, why do you need more leads? Sales team can't close. We don't know who our ideal customer is, but why is this important for you, right? Like, why is that the case? They can get even deeper than that. Obviously, you want to be a little astute with this. You want to control how far you go. You don't want to completely discombobulate them, especially if they're a little bit more of an emotional person, right? But you do want to understand the actual answer behind the problem. Never accept anybody's first answer when it comes to a problem. Always dig a little bit deeper, okay? Then we want to agitate the pain. Imagine pouring salt on somebody's wounds, okay? You want to make the inaction completely unbearable. So this is how it happens. You don't lead with your solution. You're going to lead with their pain, okay? Here's an agitation script that, once again, not necessarily follow it to the T, but understand the actual emotional journey that you take them on. So, Bob, you said this has been going on for about 6 months. If I do the math, that's roughly going to be 1,000 hours of wasted team time. I mean, at your team's rate, that's what? Like 150,000 in lost productivity? What could you have done with an extra 150,000? And if I know any further information, didn't you say your daughter's about to start college? That extra 150,000 can definitely go into the college fund, right? So you want to really agitate that, okay? And you want to make the cost of inaction seem like the worst thing on the planet. Because, by the way, for a lot of people, it really is. A lot of people are in such situations where the cost of inaction is extremely, extremely bad, okay? So you want to highlight the time lost, hours wasted, the money lost, revenue left on the table, opportunity cost, what they could have built instead, emotional cost, stress, frustration, team morale. If you guys are having a difficult time understanding this concept, instead of thinking about it in terms of software engineering and just a business concept, think of it for something, let's say, like a fitness coach, okay? And a fitness coach trying to sell somebody a healthy lifestyle or a healthy diet. And it can be somebody on diabetes or somebody that's a little overweight where their actual life is on the line. So what you're doing could be just as important, but maybe you're not seeing it because you're just seeing it from the concept of a business and money being exchanged. But in reality, that money is going somewhere. That time you save them is going somewhere. That extra money you bring them is going somewhere as well. You are actually having a big impact. Just because you're not a doctor or just because you don't have an offer that immediately you get to see the value of does not mean that what you're doing is not important, and does not mean that whenever you talk about the inaction of things, you are manipulating them psychologically. You are not. For a lot of individuals, it is actually as serious as I'm making it out to be, okay? Now, step 4.5, this is what I said, well, there's an extra kind of step in here. You always want to summarize the pain point, okay? You do this for 2 reasons. Number 1, to showcase that you have a proper understanding of what they are going through, okay? What this does to the prospect at hand is it makes them realize, oh, wait, this guy actually listened to what I say, okay? And then you want to basically talk about exact pain points in their own language, okay? Then you want to present a solution. Only what they told you they need, nothing more. Here's the rule that you want to follow. Only mention what they talked about. If they didn't mention it, do not pitch it. Okay, I'm going to say that again. If they did not mention it, do not pitch it. Here's what the script will look like for, let's say, a particular solution. Then, once again, pay attention to the emotional journey we're taking them on. look, I'm in the business of making things work for you. Recently, I helped a particular person, case study, achieve a particular result. I have something that could help you get similar results. Would you like me to tell you more? Once again, remember the exact priming here, priming them to say yes. Okay, always remember that. And you need to tailor your offer to their words. Use their language, not yours. Reference their pain points specifically. Map your solution to their problems, not your features. Okay? If you mention something that they never brought up, you are going to lose trust with them. Or if you introduce something that they didn't talk about. And another really important thing here, map your solution to their problems, okay? Not your features. And then it's the price reveal. We're going to anchor the price. We're going to use the silence technique we talked about, and then the close is going to come. Now, before you reveal the price, okay, you want to make them, in your own head, understand that, okay, everything makes sense here. I'm ready to get started. You want to make it such that they will have no objections once the price comes out. For example, did everything we discussed make sense here? Does this sound like something you would need, right? Does this sound like something would be helpful? You want to make it so they justify to themselves. Yeah, this is actually perfect. This is exactly what I need. You explain my problem perfectly. You explain the solution perfectly. This is exactly what I need. Okay, would you be able to get started today? Yeah, I would be able to get started. And you say these things to eliminate the objections down the line. If you ask, would you be able to get started today? They say yes. You reveal the price. They say, actually, I can't get started. You can say, you just told me you can get started today. Of course, that prevents people from BSing you, okay? And then you don't have to explicitly say besides the price, just say, is everything a perfect fit that we discussed? If they say yes, and then you bring up the price, now you know the only thing that they're going to object about is particularly the price, okay? Now, whenever you do reveal a price, you always want to anchor that particular price. I'm going to give you an example here. You don't have to use it specifically. Just understand the emotional journey you create. Once again, for example, if I say our fee for building this is, let's say, $25,000 setup plus $15,000 a month retainer, but people who make quick decisions are always our best clients, and we love working with them. We can always get them the best results. Thus, if you move forward with us today, I'm going to waive the $25,000 setup fee, and it's just going to be $15,000 a month. The emotional journey you took them on is you put a price here in their head, a high price. You brought that price down, and you showcased that, look, the frame you created is a good client who gets the best result is somebody who's in this frame. So you put them in a frame. You create a frame for them to put themselves in, because obviously they're going to want to think, yeah, I make quick decisions. I'm a good person. I'm going to be a good client. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to move forward today with it. That's the type of frame you want to control and set when it comes to actually getting people to sell. And then another extremely important point, you shut up. That's it. After you reveal the price and you say it is just $15,000 a month, you shut up. Doesn't matter if you're on a video call, if you're in person, you shut the hell up and you just look at them, okay? Now, obviously, I'm not saying that you mean mug staring them in the eye, but you shut up, you don't talk, and you let silence fill the room, okay? This is referred to as a silence protocol. Do not speak after you state the price, not even a sound. Let the silence fill the room. It could get awkward. I've had calls where it was 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes of silence. It feels extremely awkward. It's a very unconventional type of environment that you're in. And these minutes are going to feel like hours, but that's completely normal because the first person to talk is going to lose, okay? Once again, you could have up to 5 minutes of silence. It's going to be the longest minutes of your entire life, but it's imperative you do not break that silence, okay? Next, we get to the close. If you did steps 1 to 6 correct, this step is going to come automatically, but as I mentioned previously, if it doesn't happen automatically, you still need to prompt it, okay? If the diagnosis is right, as mentioned before, close is going to be the next natural step. And there's a particular language when it comes to closing language. You know, how would you like to pay? What email should I send the invoice to? Once again, powerful words, not would you like to pay or would you like to get started? It's more so, okay, how would you like to pay? Assuming they're already going to be paying. And what email should I send the invoice to? Once again, assuming they're going to be paying and you're going to send an invoice, or if you're going to do ACH transfer. Keep in mind, you don't have to copy this specifically. Understand the emotional thing you are creating in them, okay? In general, if you're doing a 40-minute sales call, let's say, this is what it should look like. The first 5 minutes up to should be about rapport building. Framing should take you about 2 minutes to set. Discovery about 15 minutes. Agitating the pain point about 5 minutes. Presenting it about 5 minutes. Price reveal about 3 minutes. Close should take you about 5 minutes, assuming the objections don't go on for too long. Okay? Now, session 4 recap. We had the 7-step script, right? Report, frame, discovery, agitate, present, price, close. And then we had the summary as 4.5. Understand discovery is king. Win the deal in the first 15 minutes if you do proper discovery call. But of course, for the discovery call to go good, you need the proper frame and silence closes. Do not be afraid of silence, okay? We always like to yap. Don't be afraid. This should be one of your key points as a software engineer. All of you saying, I'm introverted, I'm socially awkward, I don't like talking. Well, there you go. You have a really good, powerful tool that you can use. Now, who here has lost a deal because you caved on price too fast? Maybe you got a little too nervous from the silence, and then you blurted out, oh, well, I could do it for this price. Or, oh, well, maybe I could give you a little bit of a discount. Or, oh, well, if we get started now. How many of you have caved in on your own price that maybe you went into the call thinking, I'm going to do this particular thing. I'm going to charge $10,000 for this. And by the end of the call, you caved in and you charged lower. And I know a lot of you have, so be honest and type yes if this has ever happened to you. Because, once again, same exact thing happened to me when I first started off. Keep in mind there's a little bit of a delay in chat. So if I see it a little bit later, that is fine. But how many of you have had this happen where you've entered a call trying to get a price and then you've ended up having to work for free? There you go, Andre, and even ended up working for free. Exactly. This comes from, once again, the framing, right? This is why I say framing is so, so important and why you need to be comfortable with the silence, okay? Now, everybody's favorite or least favorite portion, objection handling. Objection handling, people view it as a negative. In reality, you need to view it as a positive. Reframe your entire mind around it. Every single objection is a buying signal in disguise. Objections are not rejections. Why? Because if they wanted to reject you, they wouldn't have come up on the call. They wouldn't have listened to you talk for that entire amount. They wouldn't have even spent that much time, right? All objections that really are, is you need to change your mindset around this, is they are requests for more information. That means either the frame that you set or the discovery call you held was inefficient because you didn't provide them enough information, okay? Thus, all objections really are is their requests for more information. And the first person to give up will get the worst end of the deal almost always. So there's a 4-step formula to handling objections, okay? It's a framework. You acknowledge the objection, you then question it, you reframe it, and then you reclose them. So this is what it looks like. If somebody says, oh, well, I need more information, you say something like, totally understand. What specifically do you feel we didn't cover? I'm here right now to help you. What's your main concern? They will answer it and then ask, okay, any more questions, or are you ready to get started, right? If they have any more objections. Honestly, my personal recommendation, you would remove the any more questions here, and you would just say, are you ready to get started, or are you ready, right? Or let's get started. Be, once again, more powerful words. You don't have to copy this word for word. Understand the emotional journey you're taking them on, okay? If they say, well, after the call, if you could please send me a proposal for everything we discussed, say, look, I can totally send you a proposal, but it's literally a summary of what we just discussed here. In my experience, whenever people ask for a proposal, they usually don't want to work together. So just tell me straight up, is that what's going on? Is it the price or is it something else? Once again, cut the BS. Look at the exact scenario you're creating here on an emotional standpoint. You're putting yourself as a competent individual who values his time, and you are challenging them directly on their half-assed BS objection, because all it really is a request for more information. And that's what you're doing. Is that what's going on? Is it the price or could it be something else? Okay. If they say, well, now it's not a good time. By the way, this should almost never come up because you should have already asked in your actual thing, like, would you be able to get started? Or when would you be able to get started? Or besides the price, does everything sound good? All these things. These objections should be handled in the sales call. A really good sales call almost has no objections at the end of it. Okay. Then you say, when will it be a good time to start achieving everything you just told me? You don't have to copy this word for word, but look at it, what it does emotionally. You're agitating their pain point, the cost of inaction. Remember, Negative is far outweighs the positive. Somebody losing $500, right, is way worse than somebody winning $500. So you want to weigh in on that losing $500. When will it be a good time to start achieving everything you just told me? And then you wait, okay? Silence, let them answer. Anytime you ask these, stay silent until they answer. And then how can you make this a reality for you, right? Or just use more powerful words. Let's get started. If they say, I need to talk to my wife or my business partner or my husband, this also should never happen, because on your qualification before the call, you need to state, okay, you need to preempt it. Is there anybody else who would be part of this decision? Are you the sole decision maker? Or is there anybody else we need to have on the call? If it does come up though, like in the call, you need to offer a second call with the partner. Do not let it be a dead-end excuse. Ideally, you want to do this, you want to double check this on your pre-qualification form, whatever you're going to use. Also at the beginning of the call, as you're building rapport and as you're about to set the frame, right? You set the frame, look, we're going to discuss these questions. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Are you the sole decision maker? Or do we need to have anybody else on the call with us? Well, actually, my wife needs to be here. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to reschedule this call such that your wife can also be present. Okay? Do not waste that 45 minutes talking about them if they're not the sole decision maker. If they say it's too expensive, okay? This is always a value objection, not a price objection. Few ways you can go about this. Remind them of the cost of inaction. Remind them what they said happens if nothing changes. You can offer payment split plans, so installations of payments, and then you reclose them in arguing. What you do though, in this particular case, you never want to give a discount, okay? I need to make it obvious here. The only discount you're going to give is going to come from the price anchor you initially told them. Do not lower your prices, especially when it comes to a service. This isn't an e-commerce brand. This isn't a physical product where you have a Black Friday sale, okay? Do not lower your prices on a whim just like that. It is not too credible, and it does not do you any good, okay? If they say, I'll think about it, basically translates to, look, I'm not convinced yet. Okay, what specifically are you thinking about? I'm here on the call, tell me. And you stay silent. Wait, let them tell you the real objection, and then you can handle that immediately after the fact. Now, to help you kind of make this part even better, right, to make the closing a little bit easier for when it comes to the objection handling, to make that part a little bit more smoothly, what I love doing is I love creating an urgency frame. Usually, after the report is built, I tend to say, look, by the end of the call, I'm going to need a strict yes or no from you, not a maybe. I have found that people who say yes are the best people I love working with, and the people who say no or people who say maybe are the worst people I work with, right? So I'd rather be a no or a yes. If you say no, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm just not going to tolerate a maybe. And then you can even frame it a little bit like people who say maybe are usually the worst clients, or some type of a way to make them feel like the frame of a maybe is a bad frame to be in. So you force them to either say a yes or a no. And remember, when it comes to sales, a no is infinitely better than a maybe, because you stop wasting time on that prospect. You don't think about it constantly. Oh, should I have closed it? What should I have done differently? Okay. So the way you do this as well is you say things like, well, people who make quick decisions are always our best clients. They get the best results. We only take on maybe 3 new clients per month. Obviously, say this if you mean it. Don't BS it. People catch on. This incentive pricing is only available today. Genuinely, if you have incentive pricing, use it. And I want to make sure we lock this in for you, right? You want to create a little bit of urgency there. But it needs to be real urgency, not fake urgency. People can smell it. Now, if people come at you with beliefs, right? If the objection is a belief, oh, I don't like AI consultants. This is a lot what I got hit with. Well, do you think it's possible there are consultants designed to truly serve clients? Or do you think it's possible that there are consultants out there who want good for you? If they say no, then that's a whole world of you that it's messed up, right? They have trust issues. Most people aren't going to say no. They're going to say yes. And then you can guide them from there. If they say, oh, you know what? AI doesn't work for us. We're a very unique type of business. Well, help me understand what specifically hasn't worked. What have you tried? Why are you saying that? But remember, these shouldn't pop up too often, because the way you do your discovery should already address all of these things, okay? Now, anytime they say something, your best friend is okay. After they answer, respond with an okay and proceed. No bias, no reaction, no judgment. This is extremely important, especially if you're in person. Watch your body language here. If they say some out-of-pocket stuff, or if they say some compromising information, you cannot show judgment. You cannot show a reaction. You cannot have a bias towards them. Okay? Just say okay, and then move on to the next question. This shows you are listening without adding pressure. Now, if they say something like, oh, like father passed away or something, you can say, my condolences, sorry to hear that. That's fine. Don't say okay and move on. But if they say something else, don't make a crazy judgment for it. Okay? Next, focus on diagnosing and not closing. Okay? The more accurately you diagnose their particular situation, the more naturally they're going to ask for the prescription, which in this case is going to be close. 90% of the people on your call, remember, will be able to afford your services. If they push back, it is not a pricing problem. It is a value problem. Okay? So let's recap session 5. Objections, they're not bad things. They're simply buying signals. They want more information from you. It's not a way out for them. You want to acknowledge it, question it, reframe it, and then reclose them. And you never give up first. Silence and your patience are your best friend. They are what is extremely powerful in a sales call. Now, next up, how do we quote $15,000 with confidence, even if you've never charged more than $2,000 for a project? And that's when we get into pricing and value. So we're going to learn how to stop thinking in hourly, and we're going to start thinking in outcomes here. As a software engineer, forget about hourly rates forever. No excuses, no ifs or buts, but forget about it. Forget about hourly rates. They should never come in your mind again. This is why hourly kills your income, okay? If you conduct a project for somebody that saved them $500,000 a year, and it takes you 1 hour, at $100 an hour, you charge $100. That is insane because you just left $499,000 and $900 on the table. Hourly punishes speed and expertise. The better you get, the less you will make. The opposite is also true. If you work 10,000 hours, but you don't generate them any results, why should they still pay you if you didn't do anything for them? Okay? Hourly is fundamentally flawed. The reason hourly exists is for the corporations to have 9 to 5 employees and for them to get away with them doing as much work as possible. Okay? It is the best way to extract productivity out of a person. However, as a business owner, it is the worst way to charge. Fundamentally understand that. Okay, now, when it comes to, let's say, your actual fee, this is what it looks like, okay? If you're setting up a 3K setup, right, you should save them, let's say, $30,000 a year or something like that. You always want to price by value, not by an hour. There should be a multiple. For every $1 of your fee, the client should get value out of it. It could be 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, doesn't matter. There should be a multiple. If you're doing something and the client is losing money, guess what? You probably shouldn't be doing that, okay? Now, an extremely good way to think about this is as follows. If I told you that there's a lottery ticket, and if you buy it, you are guaranteed to win $1 billion. How much money would you spend on that lottery ticket? Well, most of you would say, well, I would spend $999,999,999 because you'll be able to profit a dollar, right? Your service is a lottery ticket with a known outcome, okay? It's not arbitrary. So you need to price accordingly. Understand this point, extremely important. If you knew that you can generate an X amount for a particular business in value, okay, then they should be able to pay you at least just as much, but obviously less than the value that you're going to generate for them. And price anchoring actually comes into aid here, and it helps us do this really, really well. So whenever you price anchor, you obviously state the full price, right? So this could be, let's say, if you're doing like a setup and then a monthly fee, then you want to introduce incentive-based pricing for quicker decisions. You say people who decide fast are always our best clients. You waive the setup fee from the same day commitment, and the anchor makes the real price feel like a bargain. This is just one particular example. You don't have to do this specifically. More so understand the exact emotional thing that you are creating for them, okay? Now, how do you go ahead and package your offer? Well, there's multiple ways you can go about it, right? A lot of people, what they tend to do is they want to have a discovery call, like a free discovery call that they do, and then they try to sell on that discovery call. Most people, if you're higher up, you'll be able to do paid pilots. Like, for example, we can do paid pilots right now with our firm. or you can just get straight into a retainer. It really depends. There's multitude of ways of going about it. But initially, when starting off, you're most likely going to start off from a free discovery call that you're going to do. That's later going to turn into an actual upsell. Only a few of you in here would be able to instantly jump into a retainer or a paid pilot right off the bat, okay? Now, if they say too expensive, right? What you want to say is, once again, besides the price, was everything a good fit? The question is whether $50,000 solves a $150,000 problem. What would it cost you not to solve this for another 6 months, right? And once again, offer installments. Never, ever offer a discount on your price. If you offer a discount on your price, that means you do not value fundamentally whatever it is that you are doing. If you in your head do not believe you value it, you will not value it. You will always subconsciously sabotage yourself. Know your worth in this context especially. You might say, Bugo, I'm a beginner. I've never sold anything to anybody. I feel like a fraud. I feel like an imposter. Okay, does not matter. Even those individuals have a value. That value could be low. I'm not saying it needs to be high, but have a non-negotiable value. You will never, ever, ever go below. Okay? Have that for yourself. Once again, I'm going to keep banging on this. Never discount your price. You can restructure the deal, offer installment payments. You can reduce the scope, offer maybe a pilot, a different offering, but never, ever lower your number for the same exact thing that you're going to do for them. Okay? Now, how do you quote with confidence? How do you go about stating the number? Well, state the number. Don't apologize for it. Don't say, oh, it's only 10,000 or oh, it's just 5,000. Don't explain the price either. Let them react to it first. If they flinch, that's fine. Wait and get comfortable with the silence and stay confident in it. Because when you're confident in your price, you're also confident in the value that you provide. When you go to a Rolex store and they say, yeah, like this is $40,000. And then they notice, you're like, oh, I can't afford it. So they say, well, actually, sir, for you, we'll do $38,000 if you buy right now. No. They say it's $40,000. Can you buy it? No. We offer payment plans if you want, up to 6 months or 8 months. If not, bye-bye. Go ahead and get out of our store. You can afford it. Very, very simple. Confidence in price means confidence in the value that you provide. So, to give a quick little recap. Forget about hourly. Only price by outcome. Your anchor is your best friend. Give the full price first and then anchor it, right? Price anchor it. Never, ever discount. Restructure the deal instead. Never discount. Once again, I'm going to say this until you guys get it. Do not discount. It's going to put you in the realm of the Upwork developers, okay? Now, section number 7, communication mastery. This is the skill that compounds 100x for engineers, and this is going to help you a significant amount on your sales journey, okay? For software engineers, if you have sales plus proper communication, you are essentially, you have Midas touch. For those of you who don't know, Midas touch is the King Midas, who everything he touched turned into gold. That's who you become, basically. And there's a specific pre-call preparation checklist that you need to have to make sure that everything moves smoothly, okay? Especially when it comes to communicating all these things. First and foremost, if you had an intake form, or if you have some type of who you know who you're going to meet, research the company. Spend about 10 minutes. Find some pain points, right? Prepare specific questions that you can ask that has to do with their particular thing in mind. Do they have any case studies? Review them. Test your setup if you're going to go on an online meeting. Is your camera working? Do you have a good mic? How's your lighting look? Right? Does it look professional? Also, video call body language, right? Make sure camera is at eye level. Lean slightly forward when speaking, right? Nod when somebody speaks and say that you're understanding them. Hands are visible. Have a professional background. Have something presentable, okay? Do not give them the essential chance to strike nose before you can even get to the main thing, okay? Voice and tone control too, extremely important. Slow down. No need to rush. Whenever you rush, it gives us the vibe that you're being nervous. Talk slow, builds authority. Have pauses. Pauses signify confidence, right? It lets points land and match their energy. Mirror their pace. I mean, don't be a robot, don't be a hype man, but if they like to speak fast, maybe speed it up a little bit. If they're more on the slower side, slow it down, okay? Match them, mirror them. Now, post-call, what happens after the call is done? We also have a checklist for that. There's 2 ways that a call is going to go. Either A, you messed up, right, and you couldn't sell, or B, they were not a good fit, right, which means their qualification was bad. If you messed up, you need to follow up with them. Okay? Do not give up on anything. You messed up, there's a very high likelihood that you can still get them back. You do not understand initially how many deals I messed up in my year 1, but because I followed up with them and then landed them in year 3. It took almost 2 years for me to land the clients that I messed up in year 1, but I still got them. Do not burn the bridges. Do not do anything of that sort. If you messed up, acknowledge it, but continuously follow up with them. If they're not a good fit, well, see what didn't make them a good fit. Why were they on a call with you? Why did they waste your time? Or why did you even waste their time, right? Understand what allowed that to happen. What do you need to change to make sure that this doesn't happen again? And I'm going to give a little bit of a thing from what John said here, one of our top founders in Code to CEO. The biggest thing really is consistency. If you can do it, the rewards are so worth it. This was about 3 months in. They did 50,000 a month and pointed out the consistency in doing things on a day-to-day basis and got this insane of a result just 3 months in, right? So like I said, the things that I'm talking about here work. You just need to give them the time and energy for it to actually bear fruit. So to give a little bit of a recap, communication is the skill that compounds for engineers, extremely important. And always follow up post-call, right? Never stop. Day 1, day 7, day 14, day 30, day 1 million. Never stop. I followed up with prospects over the course of 2 years, okay? Because that's the way it works. A lot of you who might be on this call might even know that if you've applied to Code to CEO or if you've hopped on a call with me, I've continuously followed up with you throughout the years as well. Because like I said, practice what I preach. Always follow up with people. Do not burn bridges. You do not understand what's happening in their lives. You do not have complete control of life in general. Always follow up. It takes 1 or 2 seconds from you, but you never know what the result could be at the end of the day. Okay? Now, session 8. A couple of advanced tactics we're going to get into. These are the tools that you can use to separate yourself from just people who really talk, right? We have the emotional state stack. Report is mostly for comfort. Discovery is for vulnerability. Agitation is to create urgency. Presenting the solution is to create hope. Price is to introduce tension. And the silence is to get a decision out of them. Okay? You want to read the room. If they're leaning in, they're engaged. Go deeper into that particular topic. If their arms are crossed, pull back. Ask a question. See what made them uncomfortable. If they're looking away, their eyes are constantly bouncing. You've lost them. Re-engage them with something else. If they're nodding, they agree. Advance the conversation further, right? Understand these things. Take these hints. Now, this one is a very particular thing you can do. It's very, very specific though. Don't always do this. But if you see somebody there are certain individuals in this world who are going to require a little bit of hand-holding. And for these particular people, you need to approach it this way. You say, honestly, this might not be the right fit for you, right? Because that creates scarcity, creates value, and it's a reverse psychology trigger. When somebody is feeling undesired, they want to be desirable. So when you pull away, they pull closer. But once again, only use this when genuinely appropriate. This is when somebody's an actually good fit, right? But you know they're the type where they're going to need a little bit of hand-holding because they themselves are not going to make the decision for themselves, and you know you can genuinely help them and change their life. You do this exact tactic. This isn't going to be too often you're going to use this, maybe once in a blue moon, but just always remember that it is out there and that you can use this, okay? Now, generally, you want to future pace stuff, okay? Outside of making the inaction seem bad, you want to future pace stuff. So imagine 90 days from now. Imagine your pipeline is going to be full. You're going to be charging $15K a month. Clients are going to be coming to you. And it's not going to be a dream. It's going to be one system away. Do this for themselves, but also for you. Think of it for you right now watching this, right? You could be exactly here a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. So what happens if you don't solve this in the next 6 months, right? Ask that question. Make them understand the weight of it. Another thing, referrals. Usually whenever you close a call, right, and you're going to begin implementation or you're going to begin whatever the case, you want to ask for a referral after the fact. Usually this can come from the first win or just a positive result. When they're most excited about working with you, this is when you go in and you ask them, you ask, who else do you know that has this problem? Because understand referrals close 4 times faster than cold leads do. So referrals are your best friend. Do not forget them. Referrals are also part of the sales process because, end of the day, it's essentially a pre-qualification that you're doing. Okay? And another thing, sales is not a task. Sales is a way of living. Okay? This is my sales manifesto. I find clients who need what I built. I describe the changeable experience. I earn referrals for exceptional delivery. I follow up relentlessly with value. I build trust by being genuinely helpful. And I do this every single day of my life. When I'm at the gym, when I'm outside, when I'm talking with people, I'm interacting with them. Sales is a part of my life. It is not, if I were to make a video game analogy, think of it as a passive skill. It's always active. It's always there with you, okay? It's not something that you just toggle and turn on. It's always there. Now, a little bit of a session recap. The emotional states, guide them through the entire journey. Read the room, adjust in real time. Sales is dynamic. It is not static. Understand that. Don't be a robot. And sales is a lifestyle. It's not a task. It is a very particular way of living, okay? So there we go. Everything you need, one particular system. All the frameworks we talked about, the doctor model, the yes ladder, the silence protocol, the PAS framework, right? Problem, agitate, solve. The cost of inaction, the trust equation, everything we discussed, but none of it is going to matter if you don't take action on it. Yeah. So take action. Practice the script that we just run through. Okay. Run through all 7 steps, technically 8. Book the calls, actual prospects, and then track your KPIs. Leads, conversions, proposals, deals, revenue. Record your calls, transcribe them. What happened? What didn't happen? Your revenue initially, I mean, you're going to be grinding. You're not going to get too much. And then you're going to get a little bit of traction, and then you're going to compound like crazy.